Is the economy dragging or landing softly? The data are noisy, and higher tariffs on steel and aluminum have just begun to clang. President Trump and Vladimir Putin had a phone call, no hope for a ceasefire. In fact, Trump predicted Russian escalation against Ukraine. Rarefied air. For most political strategists, that means electing a president. For Terry Sullivan, it meant climbing Mount Everest. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Economic numbers are flying today. Data on jobs, tariffs, deficits, the projected loss of health care and food assistance. And of course, because this is Washington, there are lots and lots of meetings. But a very big one at the White House is underway as we speak. Attendees, well, President Trump and key Senate Republicans going over the fine print and quite possibly the underlying hardball politics of, you guessed it, the so-called big, beautiful bill. And about that bill, Elon Musk today amplified his criticism, writing, and I quote, "Bankrupting America is not okay. Kill the bill." Kill the bill. Ouch. We also have a top trade official who served in the Obama administration to walk us through new 50% tariffs put in place this morning on aluminum and steel imports. Plus, new CBS News reporting on abortion access limitations, continued scrutiny of library books at the Defense Department schools, and how prepared or unprepared is FEMA for the coming hurricane season. We start tonight with Nancy Cordes at the White House on the North Lawn. Nancy, great to see you. Thanks for helping us out tonight. Big meeting going on. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan set of accountants, gave some new information today about the deficit and debt implications of the president's economic agenda. Get us started.
That's right, Major. Good to see you. The Congressional Budget Office has some new numbers that create some complications for Republicans as they try to sell this bill to some of their own colleagues and to the country. The two biggest headlines out of the CBO's analysis is, one, that this bill would cause the federal deficit to grow by $2.4 trillion over the next decade. Not great when the White House is arguing that this bill is actually somehow going to decrease the deficit. And that's primarily due to the tax cuts that are in this bill. And then here's the other big headline, is that 11 million Americans would be uninsured over the next decade due to cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act that are in this bill. The White House reaction to all this today has been that, yes, while the tax cuts may lead to decreased revenue, that's more than going to be made up for by the president's new tariff regime, which they say is going to cut $2.8 trillion from the deficit. They say they're not the only ones saying that. The CBO, the independent CBO, is saying that too. So they argue at the end of the day, they will end up ahead.
And Nancy, talk a little bit about this meeting going on with the president and key Senate Republicans on the Finance Committee. They're going to have a lot to say about the tax proportions of this bill.
Right. And they have to win over nearly all of their Senate Republican colleagues if they're going to get this bill across the finish line. So what they need to discuss is, do they leave the bill as is and try to muscle it through and put pressure on those colleagues to get on board? Do they make some strategic changes in order to win over those colleagues? Do they risk losing other Republicans if they make those changes to perhaps make the tax cuts smaller, make the Medicaid cuts smaller or bigger, because there are Republicans on both sides of that fight? And how quickly can they get that done? Because the president is still pushing for this very escalated timeline whereby this would get passed by the July 4th recess, which is a tall order. It's just a few weeks away.
And Nancy, two topics that the president addressed on his social media platform. One, frustration with President Xi of China and conversations about tariffs, and a phone call he had with Vladimir Putin.
Yes. So he railed against President Xi in the middle of the night. This was apparently keeping him up because he posted about it at 2 o'clock in the morning. He said he likes President Xi, but boy, is he difficult to negotiate with. It was surprising to hear him say that because, as far as we know, the president actually hasn't had a one-on-one conversation with Xi yet. The White House has been promoting it, saying that it's going to happen. They haven't given a time or a date, but they say it's going to happen. So it's unclear what exactly it is that frustrated the president in the middle of the night. He seemed to be much less frustrated by Vladimir Putin. They had a phone call, and President Trump said it lasted about an hour and 15 minutes, though. A couple of ominous details. Number one, he said that it was not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace, something that President Trump has been pushing for. And he said that President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to Ukraine's recent surprise attack on Russian hardware and Russian jets. President Trump didn't condemn that. He simply said that Putin says that he is going to do it. And that drew a response from President Zelensky of Ukraine, who said if the world reacts weakly to Putin's threats like this, if the world doesn't stand up to Putin, then he is going to see this kind of attitude as silent permission for new atrocities and new strikes. So this peace process at this point, Major, does not appear to be moving in the right direction.
Not at all. Nancy Cordes summing so many things up for us so well. Appreciate it very much. Kelly O'Grady joins me now from New York, also on the big board, so I just keep my attention riveted this way. So, Kelly, tell our audience, if they don't know, and they might not, what ADP is, what it said today, and why it might matter for our economic future.
So this is another employment report, and specifically the ADP report looks at the private sector. And, it's very different from the Friday report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in terms of how it's surveyed, how it's calculated. That's what we like to call the jobs report. Fed loves to look at that one, sort of see how the labor market is doing. But today we got some troubling information. It shows that the labor market, according to ADP, is weakening. We were expecting to add 110,000 jobs in May. We only added 37,000. That's a pretty big gap. And two things really stuck out to me, Major. We actually lost jobs in the manufacturing sector. Remember, those tariffs, a lot of them are designed to bring more manufacturing jobs to the U.S. And then the second thing that stood out to me is small businesses. So those with 1 to 49 employees, that's how we characterize them, actually lost jobs as well to the tune of 13,000. And that speaks to those smaller companies getting squeezed by higher costs and uncertainty with tariffs. Now, I said we've got a jobs report coming Friday, could say different things, but if we see similar data to what we saw from today, that could put pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates.
And speaking of that, the president took notice of this ADP report in a social media post and said to the Fed, yet again, this is more evidence to cut rates sooner.
That's right, because we've seen low inflation to the tune of the PCE report on Friday at 2.1%. If you have the job market showing cracks, any other time, Major, you would see a interest rate cut. But Fed Chair Powell is kind of playing this wait and see game because we aren't going to see the full impacts of tariffs until the next few months. And Major, I'm going to coin a phrase here on the takeout for the first time. If we see a bad jobs report on Friday and we have that low inflation, you're going to see a Powell pickle because they're not going to be able to know exactly what to do. They're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. And the Fed's own beige book, which is essentially just a survey of the 12 districts that the Fed has, said that they are seeing slowing demand for hiring in all of those 12 districts. So that comports with what we saw on the ADP today.
Kelly, as you know, this is a nominally food-themed show, so all food-themed analogies or phrases or slogans are deeply and enthusiastically embraced here at the Takeout. So we will roll confidently ahead with Powell pickle. How does that pickle resolve itself, though? At some point, the Fed is going to have to make a decision. And with its public statements, it continues to tell the president and everyone who is hovering over these deliberations, it is going to take some more time.
That's right. I mean, Powell himself, I have heard him say over and over, I'm a data guy. I am going to wait until the data tells me I need to cut or I need to raise interest rates. I think where you're going to see pressure is if we get that tough jobs report, but there's still that, well, what about all of these inflationary pressures that are coming in a few months? I mean, they have said they don't want to preemptively cut interest rates. You're seeing pressure from the president. In a couple of months, then, we could see pressure from investors, businesses, and sort of that larger community.
You heard it here first. Kelly O'Grady coined it, the Powell pickle. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so much. Earlier today, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries spoke to CBS Evening News anchor Maurice Dubois about the budget bill and Elon Musk's notable opposition to it. Here is some of their chat.
You brought up Elon Musk. He called the president's budget plan a disgusting abomination. Is that helpful for you? You oppose it as well.
The GOP tax scam, this one big ugly bill, is absolutely a disgusting abomination. What we see right now is a Republican civil war. Elon Musk is attacking the GOP tax scam, this reckless budget that's going to hurt everyday Americans. House Republicans are attacking Senate Republicans. Senate Republicans are attacking House Republicans. Donald Trump is attacking the Federalist Society when these are the people that helped him stack the bench during his first term. This is a Republican civil war. And instead of fighting for the American people, they're fighting each other. But what Elon Musk said is the stone cold reality. When you try to take away health care for more than 15 million Americans, that's a disgusting abomination. When you are endeavoring to rip food literally out of the mouths of children, veterans, and seniors with the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history, that's a disgusting abomination. And it's certainly a disgusting abomination when all of this is being done to provide massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors, and they're going to stick the American people with the bill and increase the debt by trillions of dollars.
You can see more of Maurice Dubois' conversation with Hakeem Jeffries on Thursday's CBS Evening News. Tonight on the Takeout, the Trump administration and abortion access, what the FDA commissioner plans to do about the drug mifepristone. Some House Republicans admit they didn't read the budget bill they voted to pass. California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna will join us to chat about that, Silicon Valley, and artificial intelligence. Plus, there are a lot of climbers in D.C., but this one actually summited the world's tallest peak. GOP political strategist Terry Sullivan on the climb of a lifetime. Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. And here with me in the Conversation Corner to continue our conversation about tariffs, the implications, and the brand new ones today, which are a very big deal, Francisco Sanchez. Francisco served as the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade in the Obama administration.
Yes.
Francisco, it's great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Major.
Talk to my audience in an explanatory way about the possible downstream consumer effects of tariffs of 50% on steel and aluminum.
Well, it will touch consumers. There's no way
to avoid that.
There's no way to avoid it. There's a new business survey that came out, and one of the questions was how are you going to manage the increased cost of these tariffs? And 76% of the respondents said at least some or all will go down to the consumer. Some businesses are trying to absorb it, trying to do things to reduce costs, but some or all will ultimately go to the consumer. You may not feel it right away, but eventually you will.
And when we look at Canada and Mexico, two of our largest trading partners, what have they said so far about the implications from their vantage point about these tariffs?
I haven't heard any comments from Canada. I just saw a news reading less than an hour ago that President Sheinbaum of Mexico said there will be a response if they can't reach an agreement. So I
think the Canadians said more or less the same thing. That they're going to wait and see if they can resolve something in the next couple of days, maybe a week or so.
Right. Makes sense.
But if there are retaliatory tariffs, then things get even more complex and possibly more costly.
Well, it certainly gets more complicated for American business that sells into Canada and sells into Mexico. But yes, it escalates the trade war that it could become a trade war where we seem to have things more or less under control, certainly with Mexico.
Do you find yourself in a kind of whipsawed intellectual space right now? Because you worked for the Obama administration. You were telling me during the break, some of those who were your strongest backers and advocates were Republicans back then, and you got a lot of crossfire, as it were, from Democrats about free trade. Do you feel like you're in a strange upside-down world now?
It does feel a little...
Kind of a Stranger Things reference?
It does feel a little odd because, in fact,
Love that show, by the way.
Whenever I do too. I saw the Broadway show just last week. When I went to Capitol Hill and I promoted free trade, I'd often get the most critical questions from Democratic members of Congress or senators. It was Republicans who support. So, yeah, it does seem strange, although I think that you're starting to see some members of Congress, some members of the Senate be concerned, particularly on the economic impact on consumers in their districts, as well as businesses that could be adversely affected. One
of the things that the Congressional Budget Office said today, and it said, look, we can't assess a lot about tariffs. It's been so long, decades since we've had them imposed at this level, so we're not really sure. But yes, revenue, more than $2 trillion in revenue, but also less economic growth.
Well, look, it's going to affect certain industries differently.
More profoundly than others.
That's right. So if you look at, let's talk about what's happened today with steel and aluminum. Certainly this will be good for the steel and aluminum industry of the United States.
That exists right now, right?
They'll likely get more sales. They could see an increased number of employees that they have to bring in. They currently employ roughly 90,000 mill workers. And overall, if you add office workers, salespeople, you're probably at about 275, 280,000.
Attached to the steel industry.
Attached to the steel industry. But compare that to industries that depend on steel. So let's take construction, for example, that employs over 10 million people. If you see a drop in employment, that's going to be, that will dwarf, or rather the increase you see in steel industry employment will be dwarfed by the number of potential job losses in the construction industry. Automobile industry employs over 4 million people. Again, if you see a drop in that, it'll be a larger number than the number of new jobs that are created in steel and aluminum.
And how many consumer products do people touch that involve aluminum or steel?
Well, it directly or indirectly, a lot. I mean, the ones that come to mind, obviously, are automobiles, homes, constructions.
Sure.
Manufacturing of appliances and other consumer goods. But indirectly, there are things that grocery stores use that require steel and aluminum. So you may not be buying something that's specifically made of steel or an aluminum, but where you buy it does use it, and it will have the effect of increasing costs.
Last question. We got about a minute to go, so I don't want to require you to do too much, but when you were in the Obama administration, there was a conversation, there has been a conversation about reshoring, trying to get more manufacturing in this country. How do you evaluate tariffs as a mechanism to achieve that?
Well, I think it will have some impact. I think you're
positive impact.
Yeah, in the sense if you want to bring industry in, you're already starting to see some companies that are looking to do that. The challenge is that a lot of products that you want today aren't going to be able to be made today. It's going to take time. A lot of manufacturers would take 2, 3, 4 years to bring their manufacturing facilities here. Supply chains are going to need to get reorganized. So it's not something you can turn on a dime.
You cannot turn on a dime, even though the president would like to see as many positive results as rapidly as possible. That's what they call at the White House Trump time. Francisco Sanchez, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Major.
Sir. I appreciate it. Up next, CBS News original reporting. We love to say that about access to abortion medications, FEMA readiness, and books, DEI, and the military. That coming to you from our family table when we come back here at the Takeout. Welcome back. Thanks for being with us. Here is a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Federal authorities arrested a man connected to the bombing last month of a fertility clinic in Palm Springs. The suspect, 32-year-old Daniel Park of Seattle, is accused of supplying ammonium nitrate, sometimes used as an ingredient in homemade explosives, to Guy Bartkus, who died in the May 17th bombing. Authorities said the two shared a fringe theory that opposes all procreation. Dueling House investigations with high clickbait potential. Kentucky Republican James Comer, chairman of the Oversight Committee, will investigate President Biden's health while in office. Comer is seeking testimony from some of the former president's closest advisors, including his chief of staff. Meanwhile, Massachusetts Democrat Stephen Lynch, ranking member of that same oversight committee, will probe alleged drug use by now former special government employee and still world's richest man, Elon Musk. One of the big questions, how much did President Trump know or not know? She spoke on behalf of top Democrats, but now is no longer one herself. President Joe Biden's former White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, announced today she is an independent and, coincidentally or not, is writing a book with the same name. The Defense Department is reviewing more than 500 books available to students in DoD-run K-12 schools to see if they conform with President Trump's efforts to remove all traces of diversity, equity, and inclusion from the federal government. One of the books in question was written by President John F. Kennedy. Our Eleanor Watson has been working on this story. She joins me now at the family table, along with Alex Tin and Olivia Rinaldi, all of whom have original reporting to share, and I'm delighted to say that. Eleanor, let's start with you. Walk us through this effort to scrub the lists of books in these DoD-run K-12 libraries and the implications thereof.
So the Defense Department education system for K-12 started in February reviewing books in its school libraries to comply with the president's executive orders to root out DEI from the military and from K-12 education. That review started then. The ACLU has challenged that review, saying that removing any books is a First Amendment issue. The review is ongoing, but we should note that they removed the books using keywords from those executive orders, just like the Naval Academy did. And the Naval Academy initially removed nearly 400 books and reinstated nearly all of them after guidance was made clear, proving that some of these anti-DEI policies have not been outlined with specificity during this purge of DEI.
And really quickly, Eleanor, how many schools, how many students within this DoD system?
161 schools around the world and about 900,000 military-connected students.
Wow, that's great. Alex, you have new reporting on mifepristone.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the people will remember that conservatives and abortion opponents have long been calling on the FDA to change, restrict, or remove the approval altogether of mifepristone. That's the abortion drug that is widely prescribed, not just for abortion, for managing miscarriages as well. The FDA has long said it's safe and effective, but we've heard calls specifically from Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley for the FDA to essentially review the safety of mifepristone again and potentially restrict it or pull it from the market altogether. Secretary Kennedy, head of Health and Human Services, committed to telling the FDA to do that. And now Hawley says he's received a letter from the FDA saying that they indeed are doing the review, but we don't know exactly the details of what is in that review or what it will entail.
And how far back does the research on mifepristone go?
Yeah, I mean, look, mifepristone has been widely used, safe and effective, for decades in the United States. But it's important to be clear, too, one of the big criticisms that people like Hawley have with how the FDA has regulated mifepristone is because it's rolled back some of the restrictions that were initially imposed on the medication when it was first brought to the market. It depends on who you talk to and whether those rollbacks were justified. But of course, to be clear, the review they're doing now is not just about those restrictions. It's about the drug's safety and efficacy in general. We'll see what comes of that.
Olivia, you also have new reporting about FEMA and hurricane season.
I do, but first, I was told there was always going to be food at this table.
You know, there's not food today. I'm sorry, you'll just have to eke by. You'll just have to hold yourself
in the makeup
together.
room will do it.
I don't have the food today. You know, I can't run the delivery service every single day here at the Takeout, Olivia.
I'll just bring in the Starburst.
But you caught me. The audience now knows for sure.
I'm sorry. I had to call you out on it. In all seriousness, though, yes, new reporting from the White House on FEMA specifically. They say that FEMA is operating in an echo chamber that is separate from where the White House is. So all of this has really started because there was a CNN report today that President Trump had approved disaster funding for Virginia, and FEMA was unaware of it. So it's kind of a question of process here, a little government process. Who gets notified first, right? Typically, these states make that disaster relief known that they need it. They then tell the government, they tell the White House, who then approves it and then usually tells FEMA. Then they figure out how to appropriate the funds. But of course, we're in this era of cutting down government. FEMA
and dramatically shrinking the size of
yes,
FEMA.
FEMA has been a target, certainly of this White House, of trying to shrink them. So it's kind of this question of chicken and egg, right? Talking about food. But what happened first, right? Whether FEMA was ineffective or whether the White House is making them ineffective because they're trying to cut them out of the process. In any case, the people who are suffering in all of this, or who might be suffering, especially in hurricane season, will be people in states that need that disaster relief funding. Our Nicole Skenga had reporting that Florida, their emergency director, has not even had a conversation with the new FEMA acting advisor. And we're now in hurricane season. And if you're in Florida, you know that's serious. So their state is literally standing up their own assistance program because they're worried they're not going to get that funding from the government approved.
That's fascinating. And Alex, you have new reporting also about seed oils, baby formula.
Yeah, that's right. You know, FDA Commissioner Marty McCary, he has people. It's no secret that there are no fans of seed oils in the new administration under Secretary Kennedy.
And what is a seed oil?
Seed oil, it's a soybean oil, it's a safflower oil, it's the typical cooking oils that people are familiar with, but there's more advanced versions that are used in infant formula.
Got it.
The reason that matters is because there was a meeting today hosted by the FDA that is supposed to begin this process that they're saying of reviewing the new standards that they want to create for what should be put in infant formula in the United States. There is a lot of legitimate controversy around the ingredients that are used in infant formula, but when you talk to experts in this field, including some of the experts that were on this panel that the FDA convened, there is a lot of frustration that there's so much focus on seed oils when they think there are so many other things about the way that infant formula is regulated in the United States that should be updated. One big frustration that we heard time and time again, though, not just from the commissioner, but also from the experts they brought in, there's a lot of people who like how infant formula is regulated in Europe and wish those standards also applied here in the United States.
And Eleanor, we talked about this on the show yesterday, but add a little bit more context to the Navy review of named vessels, especially those, maybe entirely those, that it's reviewing for civil rights icons in our country.
That's right. That's part of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's war on DEI. His first day at the Pentagon, he vowed to rid the Pentagon of DEI, and one of his first actions was canceling cultural awareness months like Black History Month and Pride Month. And now that we're in Pride Month, he has directed the Navy to rename the Harvey Milk, the gay rights icon, one of the first openly elected officials who served in government, and a Navy veteran. We've also learned the Navy is reviewing whether or not to name other ships named after civil rights icons like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Harriet Tubman, and Thurgood Marshall. The Defense Department has confirmed they are reviewing these names to align with what the Trump administration values as warrior ethos.
Eleanor Watson, Alex Tin, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much. And Olivia, I'll have food next time. I really promise. I promise. I promise I'll have food. Don't look at me that way. Stop looking at me that way. Question, what do Democrats think about Elon Musk's call to kill the Trump agenda budget bill? Well, we'll talk to California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna about that next, here at The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. As we told you at the top of the hour, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office revealed its analysis of the House-passed budget bill and found that it would significantly add to the deficit over the next 10 years. California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna joins me now. And Congressman, I know you're dutiful. I know you always show up for House votes. That's why you couldn't jump in an Uber or get another driver to bring you all the way across town to the studio, but please come here in the near future. We'd love to have you here at the Conversation Corner. Evaluate Elon Musk and this sudden pivot away from Trump and this vocal denunciation of his economic agenda bill.
Major message received and showing up to the studio next time. It'd be good to get away from the Hill. Look, I've known Elon for 15 years. Elon genuinely cares about deficit spending. He's been talking about this for years. He thought he was going to make an impact on that, and then he sees a bill that explodes the deficit, takes the deficit from 7% of GDP, which is already a historical anomaly in peacetime. On average, deficits are the last 50 years have been about 4% of GDP. It takes the 7% of GDP to 8.6% of GDP, and I think he found that outrageous. And he's also probably concerned that it's taking away clean energy tax credits, which he's spoken out about. So I'm glad he's speaking up. We've fought before where he's not agreed with everything I've said, but he speaks his mind, and good for him.
And Ro, I want to play for you sound from the House Speaker Mike Johnson, who basically today said Musk's criticism isn't about what you said, it's about electric vehicles. Let's listen.
It's a very important first start. Elon is missing it, okay? And it's not personal. I know that the EV mandate, very important to him, that is going away because the government should not be subsidizing these things as part of the Green New Deal.
So the speaker is basically saying Musk, for selfish business purposes, wants to cling to subsidies for electric vehicles like the Tesla.
Well, look, I think I've known Elon longer than the speaker has. I've had strong disagreements with Elon Musk about Doge, but I don't think this is about his personal interests on Tesla. I didn't believe that even in Doge. He's got a maniacal focus on cutting the deficits. Now, I disagreed with the way he went about it on Doge with cutting veterans, the firing of veterans officials and gutting U.S. aid, and I spoke out about that, and I thought the way was unconstitutional. But I was never one of these people saying, oh, he's enriching himself. He was in it to lower deficits, and the reason he's speaking out now is because of the deficits. Separately, he's speaking out about the total short-sightedness of getting rid of clean energy tax credits because he understands the global economy, and he doesn't want China to win, and he wants America to lead in that. But that's what he believes is good for the country.
Ro, I want to ask you about something that's also in the Republican drafted bill that they tout aggressively, which is opening up energy exploration on federal lands and elsewhere, because the Trump administration argues relentlessly that America is dangerously behind when it comes to energy required for artificial intelligence, data centers, and the like. Both are crucial to Silicon Valley. Artificial intelligence, data centers, and the power to fuel both. Where do you fall on this question of how to meet that need?
Well, there's no doubt we're going to need 20% more energy because of AI in the future. But the cheapest source of that energy is solar and wind when you look at kilowatts per hour. So why would you be wanting to cut the tax credits to grow and generate more renewable energy? I also believe in nuclear. We have to have nuclear on the table. And then I would look at places like Homer, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, where there are people who are putting together a program to use the power that already exists there because of natural gas to have data centers. And if for the life of me, I can't understand why this president would put the world's biggest AI training center in Abu Dhabi instead of in Western Pennsylvania.
Ro, when I saw you during the 2024 campaign, you were a very aggressive and enthusiastic advocate for President Biden. Knowing what you know now, any regrets?
Well, I regret that I didn't and other members didn't speak up stronger and say we needed a different candidate. The reality is I gave deference to the old guard. In the future, we need to be more independent-minded. Of course, I was going to campaign passionately for whoever our Democratic nominee is because I believed in the values of a higher living wage and taxing the wealthy and not having these tax breaks and for the rich and cuts to Medicaid. But we should have had a different nominee.
Should you have done something more to try to make that happen?
Well, Major, you've been around politics a long time. I don't think just a relatively, 3 or 4 term member of Congress was going to change the president's mind. That said, I'm not absolving myself of responsibility. More members of Congress should have spoken up and been independent and said, no, we need a different nominee. And the lesson I've learned from all of this is don't trust the old guard. Be willing to speak up more and be more independent from just what the party elders say. And that's the lesson. But no, I don't think I single-handedly or any 3 or 4 or 5 term member of Congress was going to change his decision.
Ro, there's a confrontation going on right now as we speak between the Trump administration and California over transgender athletes participating in high school sports. The administration has threatened all manner of federal funds over this very issue. How should it be resolved? Where do you stand?
You know what's offensive is the president is continuing to have a cultural wars while people are concerned about keeping their Medicaid, about keeping their food assistance, about the cost of groceries, about the cost of childcare, the cost of rent. That's what comes up in the town halls. And he knows he's not succeeding on the economy. He knows that the bond markets are in chaos because of the deficits. And so he tries to divide us on these cultural issues. And my view on it is very simple. Leave this to the athletic associations and the schools to decide. That's what we do in California. We have a California Interscholastic Association. They make the decisions. I thought the Republicans were the party for federalism. Let the school districts decide and have the president of the United States focus on building AI centers in Western Pennsylvania and focused on the economy.
But, Ro, the confrontation is here and now. These federal funds are hanging in the balance. Is there a way to resolve this?
Well, the way to resolve it is for the president to remember that he's in the party of limited government and federalism. I mean, think about if a Democrat is president and we start to threaten states saying, if you don't change your gun laws, then we're going to withhold funding. If you don't change your abortion laws, we're going to withhold funding. If you don't fund Planned Parenthoods, we're going to withhold funding. That's a dangerous road. And the president is wrong on the principle of federalism. He's threatening everyone. He's threatening universities. He's threatening the private law firms. He's threatening private corporations. He's threatening states. George Will said he's run amok. He's a bigger role for the state than any progressive.
Ro Khanna, it's been a pleasure. Please come to the studio when you don't have votes to take care of. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Next time. I would love to do it.
Thank you. You know, you'll normally find our next guest here on CBS News breaking down the top political stories of the day. Up next, he's not here to talk Capitol Hill, but a much bigger hill. His journey to the top of Mount Everest. Next. Welcome back. You're going to be glad you stayed. Grueling, exhausting, sometimes blinding. No, not U.S. politics, though it comes close. We're talking about climbing Mount Everest. That feat was completed recently by CBS News political contributor Terry Sullivan, who joins me now. Good life decision to do this?
Terrible life decision.
Why?
Would not recommend it for anyone.
And you are fit.
Take up fly fishing.
Right. You're fit. You tell my audience what you do when you're not trying to climb Mount Everest.
So I climb mountains, and then during the pandemic, I bought a pair of running shoes, and I never ran unless I heard sirens pass in my life. And then the first race I signed up for after I bought my pair of running shoes was a 50-mile race in Utah.
Okay.
And so
not 5 mile.
No, 50.
50. Okay.
Yeah. And so the shortest race I've ever done now is 50K, so 31 miles.
Got it.
But yeah, I've done a 100-mile race in Colorado.
So you're fit.
Yeah.
Now this gets you to Everest.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
You know what? It wasn't so much about the fitness, and it wasn't even the mental toughness of the climbing. I love climbing. I've done plenty of big mountains, Denali, Kilimanjaro, plenty of other big mountains. It's the sitting around, the time you have to think. I was on that mountain for over 45 days, and I only climbed 15 of them because you acclimate. You spend so much time waiting for the right window, getting up high, then coming back down, resting, recovering, because your body's not meant to be at that altitude. Right. Even base camp is 3,500 feet taller than the tallest mountain in the continental United States.
Wow.
And so
how does that affect your body?
Just, it's entire, I've never been less fit than I am right now after climbing Everest. Because it just starves your body. You lose weight. All the weight you lose is muscle. So
it's really depleting experience.
Yeah, I got an upper respiratory infection while I was there, food poisoning. The base camp is basically this petri dish, and it sounds like it's a tuberculosis colony when you just walk past people's tents and everyone's just coughing to death. And so it's really a war of attrition and not some sort of physical feat where it's just, hey, I can, train for this.
Terry, was there a euphoric moment for you at any part of this?
Yeah, I mean, when I got back down,
Okay.
You know, the awful part about this exercise is 80% of the deaths are after people have summited.
Really?
Yeah. It's exhaustion. Like, and you get so much adrenaline, and you're only halfway when you get to the top. And
you gotta come all the way back.
Come all the way back down.
You got to do it safely with total focus
and quickly, because your body shouldn't be it that way. So you're going as slow as you, it's slow and fast at the same time as you can up. And then once you're there from at Camp 4, which is the highest camp at 26,000 feet, it was 10 hours from there to the summit, 4 hours back down to Camp 4, took an hour rest, and then went all the way back down to 21,000 feet. For one night, and then all the way back down to base camp the next morning. So within 30 hours of standing on top of Everest, I was back at base camp and hopped a helicopter later that day to fly out. So you get out quick.
It's a real simple, basic question. When you're making the ascent and coming back down, this is a stupid question. Is there a path of any kind? Is there some place that you see?
Yeah, you're roped up.
That you know where you're going and how to proceed?
100%. You are roped up at all times on the mountain. It's just because it's glacier travel, and there's plenty of crevasses, which are just big holes in the ground that are often covered by snow that you don't see. And there's high exposure. It's very steep at angles, so you're always clipped in to a rope. But there's not, I wouldn't say a path. Plenty of times it is, there's nothing. It's fresh snow and there's nothing there other than the rope, and you kind of dig up the rope as you go if it snowed recently.
Do you pause to look around and sort of behold this natural?
And that was something my daughter gave me really good advice, which is don't forget to have fun, which was pretty hard to remind myself on a lot of these days. And, it's tough to do because a lot of times you're just thinking of survival, and especially on the summit ridge, it's the most beautiful thing. It's not, I've been on top of a lot of big mountains. It's not at all like that. It's like looking out the window of a plane, only 360. Right. But we had 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was dark when we hit the south summit, and the sun was just starting to come up. And you're just and you literally are, it's as awful as it is, stepping across some people who've passed, some bodies, right there. And so, like, your mind is like...
There's a heaviness there, too.
Yeah, it was really...
a lightness and a heaviness.
It's like... And you start to question, like, why did I take this risk? What did I need to do this for? Is this the responsible decision? So you don't get to take in the majestic views as much as you'd like. But there are definitely moments that you do, and then you get a good gust of wind. You're like, oh, dear God, hurry up. And so that's it. It's, get up there quick and then turn around and get down. Yeah.
Net, are you glad you did it?
I don't regret anything in life. I think that's a good way to have it. And I learned from everything. It was a different experience than the things I took away. But I went into it for the reason, because I think we should take risks in life and do hard. In our personal lives, professional lives, I believe in that ethos. And I think pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone makes us better people. And so it achieved that. So I don't know if I would.
Okay, we certainly wouldn't do it again.
I don't know if I would. That's what I'm saying. I might.
Okay.
I might.
Okay.
If my daughter's watching, absolutely not. Never do anything like this again.
And the FCC, attention, Major Garrett, CBS News, Terry Sullivan. Thank you very much. That is it for the Takeout today. Tune in tomorrow for my conversation with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. I've known him for more than 30 years. Also on the program, Republican Congressman and House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Stick around. The Daily Report next. They'll be joined by Oklahoma Republican Senator James Langford, fresh from that White House meeting with President Trump about the economic agenda.